please do an acknowledgement to country.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to say Yama Nay Gomeroi, Wallabagan Yani Wungaloi, Lambo Mari, Mara Mara, Nale down. Dilia Yanbali, Ganamari was going to Gomeroi Yamlanginda, and Nalanginda, when Angalawa. Mr. Mayor, that's the language spoken by my family and our families right across the region, acknowledging the country that we're on, which is the land of the Gomeroi people, and making sure we pay respects to our elders who have cared and continue to care for this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors and members of the public, I'll ask those that wish to stand for the meeting prayer. And do we have James Adele here to the meeting prayer? Pastor James Adele, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Webb, councillors, staff, and ladies and gentlemen. Heavenly Father, we proclaim that Tamworth and region will grow and prosper as we unite with the great diversity of people that live and work here. We thank you for the oneness of purpose in the councillors and staff of Tamworth Regional Council to make Tamworth the shining light of community for New South Wales and Australia. Continue to work in our civic leaders as they deliberate and guide us for the betterment of Tamworth and our people. Bless us as we celebrate Christmas, and may 2025 be a year of greater community in all ways at all times. In Jesus Christ our Lord.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Councillors, I'll declare the meeting open, and item 1 on the agenda is apologies and leave of absence. There are no apologies tonight, so I'll move straight on to item 2, community consultation. We have one speaker registered, Peter Gill. Mr. Gill, if you'd like to come to the podium and speak, thank you. Talk about it, please just notify the councillors what item you're speaking to.
Sorry?
What item you're speaking to?
Yeah, okay. I'm speaking on item 6.2, notice of motion. Questions with notice. Mayor, councillors, staff and visitors. I wish to provide my observations and comment regarding the expulsion of the public gallery at the meeting of 26 November 2024. The response provided to item 6.2, notice of motion, questions with notice, in my view, deflects from the question raised. The response references a discussion paper for which comments closed on the 15th of November 2024. This article primarily references councillor conduct and contains a singular sentence referencing conduct of the public. That discussion paper is yet to be enshrined in legislation. Respect is a two-way street. I do support reasonably applied meeting decorum. The public have been waiting 2 years for the atrocious acoustics of this room to be resolved. The live streams contain background noise attributed to the front of the meeting, and frequently the councillors and staff are inaudible to the gallery. Regardless of the position taken, the public will, and have done so, decide the optics of the situation. The TRC Code of Meeting Practice is the primary reference, supported by the TRC Code of Conduct, the Local Government Act and Regulation. It is my interpretation of these documents. Disorderly conduct is the only conduct referenced. Disorderly conduct for a member of the public is not defined. Disorderly conduct for a councillor is defined, albeit loosely and deficiently. Grammatically, the words councillor and member of the public are used in the singular. As such, it is contended that only those persons identified for disorderly conduct should be removed. It cannot be fairly applied to a whole gallery if some people were disrupted. The quoted discussion paper provides little improvement, if any, on this. In closing, the public will judge the optics of 26 November. It is considered the existing TRC Code of Meeting Practice and the supporting codes, acts and regulations require amendment to better define the meeting protocol. May I commend the WA, Western Australia, Guide to Council and Committee Meetings and Queensland has something similar as background reading in this regard. Thank you. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Mayor's comments at the beginning of the meeting, and I think that provides a lot more definition on the subject. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Gill. Councillors, we'll now move on to the meeting. There is no other people registered for community consultation. Could I have somebody please move that the minutes from the previous meeting are true and correct record? Councillor Budd, secondly Councillor Sutherland. Any questions? Any councillors? I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll move on to item 4, disclosures of interest. Pecuniary, non-pecuniary or subject. Is there anyone wishing to disclose any interest? There is none. I'll move there to item 5, Merrill minute. There is no Merrill minute. I'll move into item 6 and 6.1. We have a number of notices of motion, so 6.1.
Moved, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Ryder.
Moved, Mr Mayor, yep.
Stand and move that.
I move item 6.1, Mr
Have
Mayor.
a seconder. Councillor Mears. Councillor Ryder, can I just, there will be some commentary from you in a second. I'm interested here, but we made this decision in June, which you were at, and it was a unanimous decision to write the debt off, going back on the records. So I'm just wondering what's brought this to where it is now, if you can just help me with understand that. And the other thing is, because that decision was made in June and then some months later it was enacted, you being a councillor for as long as you have, like me, understand that you can't reverse that decision after this period of time. So, Councillor Rod, I'm just interested to hear where you're coming from. I'd be very interested to hear what
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm certainly happy to remove the word rescission from that notice of motion. Just quickly, in relation to the intention of my motion, it was an attempt to address the inequity felt by ratepayers at large since that vote. That a large corporation that continues to trade is what they perceive to be let off the hook for essentially 9 cents in the dollar, and fellow ratepayers that may have fallen behind in their own rates and have a bill equal to or more than $1,000 are chased relentlessly by metropolitan law firm SR Law. While I appreciate that we have enjoyed 9 cents in the dollar from Virgin Australia, the company does continue to trade in Australia as Virgin Australia.
Can I just correct that? That company does no longer trade.
Well, look, it was, Mr Mayor, it was wound up, and then the new company that took over that company continues to trade as Virgin Australia. It has an agency agreement with Corporate Express, believe it or not, in Tamworth, that if you apply for, if you make go online and book a flight through Virgin Australia, you'll get a flight from here to elsewhere through their agent. But I would like us to be creative with the way we chase the company for these fees. The unpaid amount could be spent on infrastructure around our local government area, like we've heard at Barraba, the need for a replacement pool and slide, some shared footpath for Tribe Street, or just indeed we heard tonight footpath over on Armadale Road. In relation to the figure quoted of $354,931.76, I appreciate the commentary provided by the General Manager. I could not find that in the annexures of the 25th of June that described all of the write-offs, but specifically this one. At the time, the media referred to the debt of $649,415.64 too, and that wasn't corrected. I am pleased that our residents can see the identity of the bad debtor and that there are efforts in place to avoid a debt of that magnitude in the future, and I'm in the hands of my fellow councillors.
Can I call a point of order, please, Mr Mayor? Just to clarify, are we discussing a rescission of a decision the council made, or did Councillor Otter remove the rescission aspect of changing a decision that had already been made. Can I just get some clarity on what it is that's being put forward if it's not a rescission of a decision that has been put forward?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to withdraw the words rescission from that motion.
So Councillor Roddy, you do understand that there's no legal grounds to recover the debt. All of those legal grounds have been exhausted because the company's been...
No, yeah, sorry, Mr Mayor. Noting that our original motion did stipulate that we could continue to chase that at a later date without.
If we're, I might ask the General Manager to help me out here, but I think he's answered your question very well in that commentary. So, understanding that when the company's wound up as such, and we along with 6,000 other claimants got 9 cents in the dollar, so that company was finished. A new company may have started up, but it's a new entity, complete new legal entity. So we can't chase another entity for the debts of this entity. I'm not quite, do you understand that? Yeah, thank you. Further comments? Councillors, anyone to speak against, or Councillor Matt Sharpen?
Yes, and I do note that Mr Mayor, the total is 355, not 655 for this particular company, but companies are set up for this reason, to keep liability away from shareholders, from directors and parent companies in this case. And it's unfortunate for us as a council, but we've signed that we'll take the 9 cents in a dollar, and from my personal experience, there's nothing more you can do. Once you've signed to accept that from the administrators, you can't do anything.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Sutherland.
Still a comment, Mr Mayor. Looking for clarity on the question that I asked. Is this a rescission motion that we're asking for, or how are we able to change a decision that was made by council in June if we're not rescinding the motion that we made?
Through Mr Mayor, Councillor Sutherland, that's why we included it in the business paper, because Councillor Roddo actually submitted it as a notice of motion, not as a rescission motion. He included the word rescission in the wording of the motion, but otherwise it would be handled differently. If it had been put in as a rescission motion, I would have had to disallow it in the business paper, because you can't rescind a motion that I've already acted on.
Right. That answer your question, Councillor Sutherland?
Yeah.
Further comments, Councillor?
I'll just, Mr Mayor, I'll just certainly back up what Councillor Sharpen's talking about. It's pretty clear cut to me. We can't chase that debt. That company's gone. I face it all the time, several times a year, no matter how hard I'm crediting my business. We lose it and it hits my hip pocket, and there's just very little we can do, sadly. It happens quite often, and for the size of that company, I think we're probably fortunate it wasn't more. But it's very sad, and it's happened. We need to move on because we can't chase it all. That company's gone.
Thanks, Councillor Mills. Any further comments, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, just like to support what General Manager's been saying, and obviously we can't chase that any further. But I think part of the motion too was it's come from residents about the transparency, and when it first came to council, we didn't name who that debtor was, and now that we have, it's not a commercial in confidence anymore, and I think it helps the residents that watch in and turn up, have a bit of confidence that we are comfortable with telling them who that debt is owned to or owed from or was owed from. So I think a lot of the concern around that was that there was no transparency on who that company was. Now that's been done, I think I don't think residents will be any less concerned, but at least they know now who it was.
Through Mr Mayor, just to clarify, the reason it's in confidential when the debt is being written off is because until such time as a decision made and that company failed to exist any longer, they were a legal entity that deserved to have their identity protected. The company no longer exists, so there is no entity to take counsel for a breach of confidentiality any longer. Yep. Hence the reason why we can name them in this report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr General Manager, and I'll just support that by saying we are bound by law to do things properly, and the last thing we want to do is be challenged for breach of confidentiality. Councillors, I'll also just say that the General Manager, following that report in June, enacted some procedures that would help us prevent this to happening again to this large degree. So, councillors, I'll have to put that motion as a receive and note. So I'll put that as a receive and note. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Yes, carried. Councillors, we'll now move on to notice of motion 6.2. Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just appreciate the answers.
Have you got a second?
Yes, sorry, Mr Mayor.
Councillor
Move it.
Pearce. Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, appreciate the answers in specifically if we start with the Tamworth Global Gateway Park. There was just a query over the total agents' legal fees were $729,064.69 as at 30th of June this year. Agents' fees were $253,377. The difference between the two is $475,687 and 69. What does that figure comprise? Is that legal fees or what is that?
We'll answer that one.
Yep.
That's right.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, it is legal fees. So every time we exchange contracts, we incur legal fees. Whether those blocks settle tomorrow or in 3 years' time, every time we exchange contracts, those legal fees are incurred. So that is legal fees, and a lot of it is prepaid, rolling forward to future years.
Thank you.
Councillor Rodder, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's a big figure. The amount of $9,360,866 and 68 showing as a profit in a ledger, have the funds been spent? And if so, what on?
Through Mr Mayor, the funds have been allocated back towards repaying the internal loan the council raised for the purchase of the land.
And one final question about TGGP. That'll do. Sorry, I've answered that one. So just moving on to the next matter, the expulsion of residents from the public gallery. I did appreciate some of the concerns raised by the speaker in public consultation, and I believe that what occurred last Tuesday, 26th of November, was quite unprecedented, certainly in my time as a councillor. And in relation to some of the commentary provided, the reference to the discussion paper promulgated by the OLG seeking commentary by councillors and staff has not been adopted as legislation in the Local Government Act, and I believe isn't relevant to this matter, which left me wondering what legislation is being relied upon to expel all residents. None of the sections quoted authorise the Mayor to do what occurred 2 weeks ago. And if it is a matter of interpretation of the Act or regulations, then perhaps this should be referred to Office of Local Government or perhaps seek legal advice. But, Mr Mayor, I must say that I was pleased to hear what you said in relation to expelling, the offenders that might commit an act of disorder. Obviously, there's plenty of legislation, but most of it related to singular issues, specifically about councillor behaviour, and even the regulations, section 233, subsection 3 of the regulations, did mention a person other than a councillor may, as provided by section 10(2)A or B of the Act, be expelled from the meeting, and this is why I think many members of the public were pretty disappointed with our council, because there was a sole offender that applauded a unanimous decision of council, and I believe that they were quite disappointed that to all be expelled when there was more motions to be listened to, positive ones too, in relation to Hills of Gold and the like. In relation to the OLG discussion paper that describes the council chamber as a chamber of democracy, I believe what occurred 2 weeks ago was a schmozzle and a grave assault on that notion that we have an open and transparent democracy. Anyway, moving on, I appreciate the comments, and I hope that we act fairly when it comes to members of the public. And in fact, it should be said, that one of the other members of the in public consultation said that it was difficult to hear with the poor PA system we have here, or non-existent PA system we have here, and I realise that that's going to be addressed, but that actually has created a lot of the angst. People have been trying to ask questions. That's why there's talking. Obviously, there's other things that have occurred, but I don't think you know, that the gallery 2 weeks ago deserved to be expelled the way they were.
Thanks, Councillor Ryder, and I'll just qualify some of that is that you're right, but if the mayor or the chair of any meeting can't identify who the person is that's being disruptive or so forth, then you're left with no real choice. And that's why I particularly made a point of it tonight, so that if there was somebody in the audience that was going to be disruptive, that they could be pointed out by others, and it would make it very easy then for the chair to do what he had to do or she had to do, depending on who that person was. Further comments on that? Anyone wish to speak against those or make comment on it? It's not really speak for or speak against, it's a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I just want to say that there's no disclosure here because I heard Mr Gill's comments and I haven't spoken to him in a couple of weeks, so it's quite interesting that we're very on the same page. And as Councillor Rodder said too, I looked at the response where it said that the recent discussion paper, well, that's a discussion paper. It doesn't exist in any formal context. If it doesn't, if we to enact parts of that, that document also talks about pre-meeting meetings and that they shouldn't occur. So we've just adopted those recently. Perhaps if we're going to look at kicking the public out under this proposed document, we stop having our pre-meeting meetings. Also, it talks about banning closed briefing sessions and suggests that councillors should not receive briefings from staff behind closed doors, such as with a development application. These sessions should be open to the public to ensure transparency that aligns with the principles of openness and public access to information. It's here about creating more transparency. A more transparent council, we should act on those points as well. So what I would like to ask is if we're enacting already, as of from last week, the proposed document where we can kick residents out, why aren't we looking at these other things, stopping the pre-meeting meetings, open the doors up for development applications and workshops to residents, which is exactly what this document talks about. And it also talks about councils individually being more open and transparent and having the ability to speak to the media, respectfully, obviously, at will. So why are we on one side doing, well, we're already doing the first one in regards to council meetings, so are we going to now implement the rest of it prior to it being a recognised document?
Councillor Mears, if you read through the commentary that was provided by the General Manager, it talks about the fact that the Chair can determine what this order is, and of course under that section can do what we did last week. So that's somewhat different to what you're talking about. In terms of us having pre-meetings, we have 5 new councillors and meetings to give councillors the opportunity to actually get their head around the new councillors, how things work and get an understanding of what is actually happening in our region and what's happening in some of those reports that are going to be presented to us. I think most of the councillors that I've spoken to have felt at this point in time anyway that that's been helpful for those councillors that come in here and sit around the table and then have to make decisions based on what's in the report and be able to speak to those reports with some degree of confidence and understanding. I think for that reason, I think it is transparent, and it is also giving the opportunity for councillors to be able to present better outcomes for our community in general. Further comments, councillors?
Can I respond to that?
You can.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I don't have a problem with the pre-meeting meetings. I think they've been a great innovation. We get to sit down and have a chat to each other, but I'm just going on what the document says.
You're going on one document, Councillor Mears.
Well, and that's what the response to that question was in the business paper. It goes to the recent discussion papers. A council chamber is a chamber of democracy, and that's clearly in a draft document that's open for discussion at the moment.
Thanks, Councillor Mears. Further comments? Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll make a comment just in regards to expulsion of the public. I think the Act is really clear in saying that the authority of the Chair or the Mayor to be able to use discretion in maintaining order in the chamber. I think that process was followed through. I think the commentary is really clear in supporting that, and I'm glad you made the comments at the start of the meeting tonight, setting some parameters around how that could look if that baby was to continue on. You know, this chamber is not a circus, it's not an event show. It is a place to have serious conversations around the strategic direction of our region, and it's great that the public are able to be a part of that process in every capacity. I will make comment to say that as councillors, I believe that we have the ability to ask questions of the staff at any time. We can send questions through to staff and get answers to responses that can help us make better decisions and understand how decisions were being made. It's happened for a couple of weeks now, and I just want to raise a concern, and that is that I believe that some of the questions that get asked in questions on notice have an underlying tone of trying to catch council staff out for poor behaviour. I think that goes against the idea of asking curious questions to make better decisions. As councillors, we have the ability and the responsibility to make these strategic decisions with the best information we have possible, and we should look at the time that we're spent reviewing and getting staff to respond to questions that seem to be set up as gotcha type questions. Now, they're never great. I work in high schools all the time. The kids try to stitch me up. I know what that looks like. I'm not saying that councillors are doing that kind of behaviour now, but I think that if this kind of process continues to move down this trying to catch somebody with a smoking gun, it's a waste of councillor time in debating that conversation. I think it's a poor use of staff time, and there are other channels to be able to get that information if we such require.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. Further comments? Councillor Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I do support the comments of Councillor Sutherland. I myself confused a little bit about some of the questions being asked. I think that perhaps these questions on notice is being used as a tool to get information maybe down the line with that smoking gun, but I think we lose the ability as councillors to speak to our staff through the appropriate channels, and I think we should be using that more as opposed to, as a question, I'd be interested to see, and maybe it's something that could be answered through you, Mr Mayor, and staff, the sort of cost involved when we answer these, for staff to go and look at these questions, what would we be able to expect council time and ratepayers' money would be spent doing this? Keeping in mind, we're conscious about it, and it's come up time and again about the ratepayers' money being used wisely. Is this really a wise way to ask questions on subjects, or is this a way to grandstand, if you would like, just to have matters heard where they can be dealt with more efficiently and appropriately by talking to staff? Thank you.
Councillor Butt, I'll just answer that a little bit, and that is in notice of motions. I've never seen so many notice of motions come forward in such a short period of time that we've been actually elected into council. I would suggest that there's been more notices of motions in this council than there has in the last 2 full terms of council, but I think I agree with what you're saying. But further comments, councillors? No further comments. I'll move have we received, did you want to make one?
No, there's no motion, Mr Mayor.
I'll move that we receive a note. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. We'll move on to item 6.3. We have another notice of motion in respect of Mr. Butt. Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The motion...
I'll second that.
Thanks, mate. I've gone too early again, haven't I? Would you like me to speak to it, Mr Mayor?
You can now.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mark. The notice is simple in its nation. The idea is to provide... We have 6 regional pools in our regional area, Barraba, Manillanundle, Katingal, Southwest Memorial Pool and Olympic Pool. And throughout our campaign and throughout talking to people with our catch-ups, it's a common theme that folk want access to their pools. They want value for money, and they want to be able to experience the pool, particularly in our hot summer times when they're open, obviously. And the cost and access has been an issue for those people, particularly in our towns and villages. So I've had conversations with staff, which have been fantastic. They're very enthusiastic about their pools and how they offer them to the public, how they get people to go in there, and I'm really confident that they're increasing the numbers with the programs they've got going. Further, that I saw an opportunity coming in consultation with Councillor Sutherland. Our school holidays are up. There's an opportunity for us to perhaps enhance the experience in our towns with the pools during the school holidays. Based on that, we've come up with some ideas, and certainly the pool staff are very, very keen to look at targeting families and youth throughout the Christmas holiday period in separate ways at their pools, maybe trading later at night, maybe trading during the day at different hours, certainly encouraging groups within the community to come forward and do their thing in the pools, sausage sizzle, barbecues, face painting, games, a range of things that could enhance the public use of our fantastic facilities. Of course, everything is a cost. We know that pools are not profitable for council. That's not necessarily an issue. What is the issue is we provide great resources and facilities to our people through our amenity. It's expected that we'll probably go close to being cost neutral in relation to our pool fees lost on these days through the benefits of the kiosk. So every kid loves an icy pole, a packet of chips and a drink and Wally's at the pool. Provides opportunities in our community to go and have birthday parties and family gatherings and an opportunity for youth to gather together and experience good company. I put it to council and I commend it to you. I think this is a great opportunity to let our staff operationally enhance our facilities, engage our community and get better use and experience in our town. I commend the motion.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation in that notice motion? Further comments on that, Councillor Sharpen?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, back in 1991, when I attended East Tamworth, I used to walk down the street and my dad worked in the Public Works Department at the top, get my cossies, and I'd be swimming a kilometre every day. And the swimming club then was massive back in the early 90s, and the pool was full almost every afternoon and every weekend. And back then, we were discussing it was around about $130 for a family season ticket, and now it's about $370. So I think it's a really good opportunity during a cost of living crisis, during the heat, the summer, to say to the community, come and use it. We want to see you guys enjoy the facilities you've got, and I want to commend Councillor Budd and Sutherland for putting this forward.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Mears?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd also like to commend the motion from Councillor Budd and Sutherland. And it was good to hear the comments by Councillor Budd in regard to the different times of opening, because it was something that I did send him a quick text about, that people were looking at potentially, and as obviously it'll go on the funding and the planning if it can be done, that Manila are asking potentially a couple of days a week if they could have an early morning swim club, or like from 6 till 9, whatever, and they've spoken to staff there, they think it's doable, but I'm more than happy to leave that operational decisions to council and to have a look at that. But yeah, I do commend this motion. It'll be a great innovation for our small towns and the kids in the region, and adults for that matter.
Thank you, Councillor Law.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just really like to commend Councillor Budd and Councillor Sutherland for a great initiative, a great concept. It's a really out there concept, and it brings the community in. It's great for the kids, particularly over summer. I love the way you've gone about it. You consulted, and the staff have grabbed it as well and are running with it. They own part of the concept as well, and that's important. So they'll drive it. Well done, and well done to everyone. Thank you.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, this conversation came around from last year. There was a round of regional tourism consultations that happened across the region, and really identified the need to try to bring more people into towns outside of Tamworth, but also better utilise the assets that we have within those spaces. So the question got asked to say that, you know, if we were able to remove the gate fee for the pool in certain times, what would that do to bring more people in? And is there a potential way that the cost of selling at the Q&E or whatever that might look like might cover the cost that was lost at the door? Each year, as councillors, we set the fees and charges for different facilities. As council, we've agreed on the charges to enter the pool. This notice of motion is giving staff the ability to see what would happen if we were to remove that fee on particular days and what they would do to bring people from Tamworth into those communities, but also reinvigorate our pools as those central spaces where community get together. You know, our pools are great assets. There's a question on what are we going to do for our aquatics across the region in the future. Fees and charges is something that really interesting seeing what it looks like. The second part of the notice of motion is to request a report back to council at the end of the trial around the impact, you know, the financial impact that it's incurred, but also the social impact that it's benefited. And I think that would be really good information to be able to help us shape that fees and charges when we reconsider it next year and the school holidays. I mean, what a greater time to do it. Also just note that I know that the concept was originally looking at pools outside of Tamworth, but no, what's good for a goose is good for the gander, and so it's good to look at how we can better utilise our pools in town, again, to achieve the same outcome, and I'm excited to see what that report, or that, the report at the end of the trial looks like when it comes back to us.
Thanks, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Brooke.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm going to echo what my fellow councillors have said and commend Councillor Budden and Councillor Sutherland for developing this motion. Look, while the Local Government Act doesn't explicitly state that local governments have a role in supporting the well-being of their local communities, I believe we should still strive to provide equitable access to public facilities in that spirit. If it hasn't already been obvious from the weather in recent weeks, our LGA gets pretty hot, and as a reminder, not everyone has a pool in their backyard. In recent times, pools have been debated in this council in the context of providing a new sporting facility to replace ageing liabilities. However, beyond sport, we must remember that pools provide a vital public service by offering residents a way to cool down, get exercise, and have a public place to meet and interact with others. For that reason, I hope to see this motion passed, and if it does, I look forward to seeing the resulting report.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I'll also commend councillors Sutherland and Budd on this great initiative. Pools are the lifeblood of our towns and villages. Rundle, Barraba, Manila, just to name a few, and Katingal. Very popular spots in summertime, of course, it goes without saying. And I think any initiative we can explore that increases numbers of visitation to our pools is a very good idea. I really am looking forward with excitement to the report at the end of the trial as to how that will increase, hopefully, visitation numbers, and may even provide us with a bit of a roadmap in the future in this type of program in the future years. I think since 1991 we've probably seen an increase in backyard pools. My wife's always asking me if we can build a backyard pool, but my response is we've got great pools in Tamworth already. We'll go down and visit one of our local pools, and she says, "Okay, rightio, good idea then." So I'd love to see more and more people utilising the facilities we have. They do cost a lot of money to run, and the more people who can use those pools, the better it is for our community, more broadly speaking.
Councillor, is there any further comments before I put the recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried unanimously. Now we'll move on to 6.4, notice of motion. Councillor Williams, move that.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Can I have a seconder for that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Mears, you wish to speak to that?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, I think it's, thank you very much, it's a bit self-explanatory. But yes, we've been going on for months and months and months about rates increases, the cost to council, etc. I just did this motion. I'm not a big drinker myself, and I don't need to have a drink after a council meeting, as do no one here. But I think if we're going to be responsible, then should we wish to have a drink after a council meeting or other meetings, then I'm very comfortable saving that money from the ratepayer's pocket and paying for it myself. So that's the motion. I did put it out for all councillors to have a look at Monday the 2nd, I think it was, and haven't had a response, so it'll be interesting to see what other comments are coming. Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak against? Councillor Sharpen.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I think just having this motion in the business papers is actually damaging our reputation. In 22-23 we spent a whopping $587 on alcohol. In 23-24 it was an entire $65, and in 24 so far it's been 103. Now the staff here work very hard. Some of them are doing 12-hour days today, as are some of us who have been working all this morning. And having a nice drink after a council meeting encourages collaboration, not only between fellow councillors but with staff. The community expect us to make decisions on their behalf and make good decisions. Some of the best conversations come out of sharing time over a frothy chop or a glass of wine. To suggest this is indulgent or that anyone here abuses it is an insult. And I would suggest this motion is nothing more than a ploy to win social media credit and would actually have a negative effect on the region.
Anyone wish to speak for the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that's absurd. Why should the ratepayers pay for the councillors to have a beer? I mean, if it's that onerous, we could just nip down to the pub after our meeting and shout at each other. But the public shouldn't have to pay for that. There is only one issue in here that I am a little concerned about, and that is, I think, and maybe we do need to work an amendment. That is TCMF 2025 and previous ones. That it's a completely different. I mean, I think I'm more than happy to support this in terms of the ban on councillors and alcohol, but there should be some certain exceptions, and I think TCMF should be one of them. And I think there was a few other mentioned, and I'm happy to be guided by fellow councillors about how that would look and how the motion would be written. But it's absurd to expect that the ratepayers should pay for councillors to enjoy alcoholic beverages after meetings.
Councillors, further speakers for? Against? Councillor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Sorry, Councillor Mears, but I won't vote for this notice of motion. I've made my sort of ideas fairly clear in communications prior. I'm of the view that this notice of motion is probably one of those conversations that could happen. It's a conversation almost in the corridor, really. So look, I'm not a drinker really. I might have a red wine about once every 2 months or something along those lines. I'm quite happy to have a glass of water after a council meeting. But I'm just not quite sure why this needed to be a notice of motion.
Councillor Sutherland.
Oh, sorry, I was speaking against.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're back to a 4.
Oh, back to a 4. Do we have another speaker for?
I'll close the motion when I get a chance, if that's all right. But if you wish to speak,
Speakers for? Against? Councillor Sutherland.
Any comment?
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I can understand to some degree around the notice of motion trying to seek some level of transparency in regards to what happens after a council meeting. But I think the notice of motion itself is contradictory in the fact that it's making a pretty large assumption in the fact that there is the consumption of alcohol is leading to an attempt to preserve public trust before seeing a report on the details of the information that's been requested. So I think it's very presumptuous around trying to paint council with a picture to set that there is already an issue that exists. And I do concur with Councillor Sharpen that it does erode the fabric of trust of council. My mother, who pays a little bit of interest to council, as mums say they do for their sons, And when I was telling her about the business paper, she said, is there an issue with alcohol on council, is there? And I said, well, I don't think so. I don't drink and I haven't seen anyone abuse the level of alcohol that people get access to. And she said, well, it sounds like you're trying to solve a problem. And I said, well, there is no problem that we're trying to solve. And so this is my issue with the amendment to begin with. We're talking around the idea of being fiscal responsible and being smart financially. The amount of time that staff have spent reporting and replying back to this, I can guarantee is more than $100 in staff wages. I can't estimate the time that staff have taken to respond to this, but I would say that it is well and truly above and beyond the amount of money that we're looking to save. So I think that this notice of motion is really lacking substance in trying to create a policy that can make meaningful change in the organisation. I think that it's presumptuous in the fact that there's no information that has been used to pull that, and to say that it is to be more fiscal responsible and preserve the trust of local government. You know, telling people not to think of an elephant only makes people think of elephants. Putting this up as a notice of motion assumes there's a problem that's being fixed when, to my understanding, and I'm happy to get a response from you, Mr Mayor, and the General Manager, have there been any incidents of misuse of alcohol within council that this seems to be responding to, or not?
I'll answer that. Councillor Sutherland, I've been on council for many terms and I've never seen an issue. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I really concur with Councillor Sutherland on this, and I think this actually suggests, it actually provokes the thought that there is alcohol provided during meetings. It actually says that. Staff during and after council events, meetings and gatherings. That is just promoting an image in community that we drink alcohol a swill, if you would like, after we finish work here. Everyone at this table has work and commitments, so they do big long days. We turn up here, we do our business, so we debate issues like this, and quite frankly, at the end of the day, one stub is not going to hurt my brain at all. It's going to do me the world of good. And I don't think that anyone that's not a radical in our region would begrudge anyone having a beer after council meeting. So keep in mind that we all drive home from here, we have a meal, we mix with our staff who work very hard to be here and support us and provide all this information and our technology. We sit down, we have a meal, and we have a beer, maybe two. I can tell you in the 4 or 5 meetings I've been to, I've had 3 beers. It's not a huge amount, and I concur. The cost of this questioning, I'd like to ask Councillor Mears, can he actually provide any evidence of staff that have been drinking or council have been drinking during meetings? If that doesn't exist, then I respectfully say that the motion should be withdrawn. I'm sorry I can't support this. I think it's un-Australian. This is what we do. And in fact, this is what the Labor Party does. This is what the PSA do when they have people come to conferences and to training rooms. That's what every union in Australia does. That's what every business does. People come and do good work and then they have a beer. It's not being abused, and I think the motion should be withdrawn, quite frankly.
Question, Mr Mayor. Can you advise if throughout the whole of council, is it a drug and alcohol-free workplace? And if so, why is, say, executive services free from that policy?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I can answer that. Yes, the council workplace is a drug and alcohol free. We have random drug testing, we have reasonable suspicion for breath testing for alcohol and so on, but that applies during work hours while you're conducting business. At the end of the day, if somebody wants to leave the council and go next door to the pub at 5 o'clock, they're very welcome to do so.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor North.
Yes, a lot of debate on this one. I'd certainly concur with Councillor Budd, Sharpen and Councillor Sutherland. I think it's the fine print is where the devil is in the fine print. It's frustrating. As Councillor Sharpen said, it's $100 over 6 months. It's so irrelevant. If we're serious about cutting costs, we cut the meals as well. We cut the nibbles, the little chips that everyone has. We cut the soft drinks. How far do we go?
It's already been suggested, actually.
After the meeting, for instance, and this is just councillors, after the meeting is a time to sit down, come together, break bread, have a beer, have wine. It's one usually. It's so insignificant. It's part of the Australian culture. We don't have to have a beer. We can have a water. We can have a Coke, whatever. It's varied. And as Councillor Budd says, it's usually one drink and that's it. And it's part of coming together. It's a chance to sit down with staff and engage and have a nice, light-hearted chat. It's progressive. Businesses do this. For me, the devil's in the detail, and it says, and staff during and after council events, meetings and gatherings. That goes right through the organisations for any meetings, any gatherings, country music festivals, Councillor Rodder suggested. And I'm sure that goes, dignitaries that come, diplomats come, any other councillors, state MPs, federal MPs, it goes on and on, where we welcome them and we might offer a glass of wine in a meeting. Not in a meeting, but at meeting. Another one too on staff, after work occasionally. When we have someone that retires after 40 years of service, work finishes, management may buy a carton of beer, bring some Coke and some water, some nibbles, celebrate their achievement in what they've contributed. We're now banning this. The Aussie tradition of just thanking the staff. Our staff are our greatest resource. We need to appreciate that, and this goes deep into that. And it's not alcohol, it's a whole of concept thing. But as Councillor Budd said, it's un-Australian. We just like to have that one drink together to sit down and break bread.
Councillors?
Close the motion.
Pardon?
Can I speak and close?
If you close the debate on you.
Oh, I keep on.
No, I'm fine.
I'll just say something. Councillors, I've been in local government for a long time, and I go to a lot of local government functions around the state, and of course, after all formal gatherings, formal meetings, mostly the mayors or general managers or other councillors or staff will get together and have conversations about the future and what's the best way to move in directions that local government needs to move, and there's always maybe one or two wines, and that's that. This council here, we've done the same ever since I can remember, and I'll go back since amalgamation, that's 2004, 20 years. Councillors sit around after meetings and they talk to staff. There's a lot of really effective communication and I guess fellowship building between councillors and between councillors and staff. And more often than not, there will be conversations around ways and means of doing what we do better into the future. And we discuss the motions that might have been put before the council at the previous meeting, or we might discuss other activities that are happening around the local government area. You take that away, I think it's a very big negative towards the way we would operate into the future. And I certainly won't be supporting this recommendation. So Councillor Mears, if you want to close the...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, quite interesting the comments being made about non-Australian and all that. As I said, this motion was put to councillors on the 2nd of December. Not a single one of you responded, not one. You've come up with figures, didn't tell me what they were. I've asked for the figures and they're not provided. So, you know, you talk about coming in here and ambushing people grandstanding. That's where I find you're doing exactly the same. I'm not suggesting anyone's got a drinking problem. I'm not suggesting no one can drink after the meeting. All as I'm saying is that we should be paying for our own drinks and not the ratepayers. So to do the grandstanding that's been now on this motion when we had more than 7 days to make contact and not one person has made any contact at all. I've asked for the figures. They're not provided, but a councillor has them. I thought they might have been provided as well. Unfortunately, we're in the situation. If you don't want to support it, that's fine. But I think that as a councillor, I earn enough money in my day job and as a councillor to buy my own alcohol if I want to have a drink after council, and I'm not suggesting anyone's swilling into it. And there was an incident in a last council which fixed up very, very quickly, and we were all spoken to it, where at a night at a pub, someone ordered an $82 bottle of red, and that was jumped on very, very quickly. So the cost is potentially can escalate, and if we certainly go to outside of here to a pub, the price of alcohol will be cheaper than grabbing it out of the fridge at the back. And I think Councillor Budd would know too, it's about 30 odd years since New South Wales Police and most government agencies stopped having alcohol on their premises, period.
Absolutely.
So why are we any different?
Councillors, the debate's now closed, so
Mr Mayor, I think I should just correct on behalf of the staff that all councillors were sent an email with the numbers and you were on that recipient list. Councillor Mears, so if you haven't read the emails from the executive staff responding to your notice of motion, that is no fault of ours. Every other councillor received the same information.
All right, thank you. Well, it's one I've missed, so.
So, councillors, I'm going to put the recommendation as the notice of motion is printed. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Defeated 6-3. So we've got Councillor Brooke, Councillor Mears and Councillor Rodder have supported the motion. The other 6 councillors voted against it. Councillors, we'll move on to the next notice of motion. Councillor Ryan Brooke.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the
Have we got
motion.
a seconder? Councillor.
I'm proposing that as part of this policy, accepted petitions become an item of business on the next council meeting paper, effectively providing residents with an avenue to have an item added to the council business paper. In discussions with other councils about this motion, one opinion I've received is that a policy of this sort isn't necessary because residents can simply send a petition to council as they would a letter. My issue with that is that it can easily be ignored, as we, as councillors, are under no obligation to acknowledge the petition. With a policy that accepted petitions become an item of business, there must be a response. That response may just be us resolving to receive and note the petition with no further action. But it will then publicly be on us as councillors to explain why we didn't debate or consider it further once the petition has cleared the bar we've set for acceptance. I've intentionally worded this motion as a call to develop a policy, so the finer details, such as how many signatures would be required and what subject matters would be acceptable, can be further discussed in relation to what petitions would be accepted. However, I urge my fellow councillors to remember that the election is still fresh in our minds, and most of us won our seats by promising to be accountable and to be supportive of residents. If we're going to follow through on this premise, we need to be willing to give residents the ability to have a direct vote in council business.
Could I have someone wishing to speak against?
I'd like to move an amendment, please, Mr Mayor. And that would be to remove item 2 as it reads and remain items 1 and 3. So the amendment would be to develop a policy to accept petitions and incorporate that into the policy register.
Did you have a second for that? Councillor Rimpey? So, councillors, we're now debating the amendment. Do you wish to speak to that first?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor, and I understand the intent put forward by Councillor Brooke in trying to make sure that the voice of community can make its way through in a formal setting to councillors. And so the creation of a policy, as Councillor Brooke said, we already accept petitions. That's already a process that does happen. And so putting it through a policy register is, again, a burden on staff to some degree to be able to create it. But if that adds levels of transparency to the community, then that's a cost that I think we should be willing to take. I do not agree that a petition that was put forward by the community should become an item on the business paper. I think that the business paper is serving a specific purpose around trying to make sure that we are moving towards our goals and direction as a council, with the ability for all councillors to put in notice of motion if we want to steer the ship in or add the direction in some space. as elected representatives, that's our role, and we've been elected, given the responsibility to do that. I think that to include that in the policy to be able to be added to the business paper opens up a lot of risk into what those conversations could be. And forcing councillors to discuss something that, again, could be liability, because the policy, I know, we can start to put parameters on what we do and don't accept. And once we start to control what we do and don't accept, then are we censoring the petition? You know, and I think that that is a pathway that we don't need to navigate down. But I think I'm happy to put forward the amendment and removing that item 2 for that reason specifically, Mr Mayor.
So councillors, again, we're discussing the amendment. Do I have anyone wishing to speak against the amendment? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, what Councillor Sutherland has just done is, in fact, made that Councillor Brooks' original motion impotent. The action is gone now. If you accept a petition of 1,000 or more people, then it's going to go nowhere. It'll be just, incorporate this policy into the general policy register. That's all we're going to do. So ultimately, yes, we've accepted a 1,000 signature petition, but essentially there's no action. We don't then put it before a council meeting to discuss and vote on it. And that's why do that? Why do that? I mean, you can see what the intent of Councillor Brooks' original motion is, and by removing point 2, basically destroys the intent and the well-meaning intent of his motion, and that's why I'm speaking against it.
Anyone wish to speak in favour of the amendment? Calvin.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. A couple of council meetings ago, we talked about the establishment of place-based committees. I think that was the wording from memory. Precinct committees, sorry. Yep. I'm just thinking out loud here. If a petition is put forward by a community, could that petition go to that committee that represents Manila or Barraba or Nundle, and then it's discussed by the members of that committee who are representing that community, and then if it's needing to go further, potentially then it's addressed at a council meeting beyond that time. I don't know. I am in agreement with Councillor Sutherland. I think if we have petitions coming to council meetings, we might eventually, I just fear that we might have council meetings with 10 or 20 petitions being discussed. We have a system set up whereby if members of the community have a concern, they can address council prior to the council meeting on the first Tuesday of each month, or the second Tuesday of each month. And then if they have further concerns, they can contact any or all councillors with any of their concerns. And then a councillor then takes that further to the other councillors and to the senior management of council. So I think we already have a process in place that allows council as an organisation, as an entity, and as a governing body to be very transparent in what it does. In fact, I think it's the most transparent level of government we have in this country. That you can go and talk to in the supermarket a member of your council. I can't remember the last time I saw a state or federal politician in a Coles or Woolies supermarket in Tamworth. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen them. So yeah, I just think that we're fraught with danger if we allow every single petition of 1,000 people or more to then automatically go to a council meeting.
Councillors to speak in favour?
The amendment.
We're talking the amendment.
Can I make an amendment to the amendment?
You can make an amendment to the amendment. Foreshadow an amendment.
Foreshadow an amendment.
Can you foreshadow an amendment?
Yes.
Tell us what it's going to be.
I'd just like to simplify it, because in the end it's continuing to accept petition as we've always done, and have a process of receiving them, recording and receiving them. So that's all petitions. We currently do that. Do we need a policy for that?
So
I'd have to get the wording for that, I'm sorry.
Is really
But does that make sense, councillor Sutherland? Continue to accept
Continue on with the current process. Is that your foreshadowing?
and record receiving the petitions.
Okay.
Because the concern was they mightn't be recorded or they might disappear.
Right, well, if this amendment is defeated, we'll go to yours. So further comments, councillors?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you. As Councillor Rodder said, I don't know what everyone's so frightened of. If our residents put together and take the time to put a petition together, I think that we deserve to at least look at that petition and make some decisions on it. We talk to residents all the time and we suggest certain ways to come to council, whether it be by petition, by a submission, by speaking at council. I think that a lot of people at this table have already forgotten in the last 4 months who actually elected us to sit here. It's the residents of this electorate. If they want to put a petition forward and they want us to at least debate it or look at it, then we owe them that to take on what they've got on mind. And I'll go back a little bit further, that we get, we look at petitions and they get registered or whatever they do with them. The big debate previously was the SRV. And the big talk was there was only 870 submissions, which is quite a number in a small place like this, but anyway, so be it. There was a petition with 3,200 signatures on it. To my knowledge, it was never acted on and the councillors didn't see it. So that's near on, well, it's well over 10% of the rate notices sent out. I think we owe the residents the respect of looking at their petitions. The residents put us here. We didn't do that ourselves. So I think that we owe that to the residents to listen to them, which many councillors do. But if they wish to put a petition to council over a specific issue, then we owe them that respect to look at it. Thank you.
Can I close it?
Yes, you can. If
Yeah.
no further council comments?
Still on the amendment, Mr Mayor?
Which amendment?
We're talking the amendment.
Yes.
Not the full shadow amendment.
We're talking the amendment.
Yeah, sorry, I think councillor.
comment.
You make comment, councillor.
I'd like to thank Councillor and Councillor Mears for speaking against the amendment, because I agree that it goes against, so point 2 is the linchpin really of my original motion. I've done my research and looking at other councils, which there is a fair amount of them around the state that already has this as a policy. And the key proponent of that is that when councils have set a bar that resident petitions have to meet, when they do meet that, it becomes an item of business on the business paper. Like I said when I was talked in my original motion, that can just be to acknowledge the recipient that we've received that motion. From what I can see with most councils, the course of action that's usually taken is that they'll direct the general manager to issue a response to that petition. But the issue there is that if right now, yes, you can just send a petition to council, but like I said, it can effectively could be ignored by us as councillors. It might get sent to us, but we don't have to respond to that at all. That's really the basis of my original motion, is to say that, okay, let's put a safety net in there that it doesn't have to come to a sympathetic councillor to take that petition and table it in a meeting. That if we're going to set this bar to say this is a significant enough support that we should consider it, it will actually come to a meeting. So for that reason, don't plan on supporting the amendment, because I believe it takes out all the original intent of my original motion.
Councillor Sutherland, did you wish to close the debate on the amendment?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, and that's just to say that in no way has myself as a councillor, and I can't speak for other councillors, forgotten the way that local government works, and that community members and residents have voted for us in an election to put us in this position. To suggest that we have been disconnected now from the residents who we represent is absurd. The policy, in no way was the amendment designed to cut the legs out from Councillor Brooke and the intended notice of motion. I think that just safeguarding, as Councillor Brooke has said, safeguarding this process is important, and that having petitions being presented directly to council in the floor of council business papers is potentially a liability and a risk that I don't think we need to take. And I know that other councils have gone through that process, but if you look at it percentage-wise, like how many councils across the country have a policy like that, and I would say it would not be the majority. The risk, I think, is too much, and I think that the amendment still finds a way to make sure that the petitions are valued, that residents' voices are heard, that those voices then seen by council, and to include that in a policy register is a big deal. And I think that changing the policy register is a way to be able to make sure that the voices of community are heard and not potentially overlooked, that other councils have suggested.
It closes the debate, councillors, so I'll ask all those in favour of the amendment to raise their hand. Those opposed? The amendment now becomes a motion. I'll now put the motion, which was the amendment. All those in favour say aye or raise their hands.
We had a amended amendment. We had a foreshadowed amendment, didn't we?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, that the amendment wasn't lost.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an amendment.
If the First Amendment fails, but it didn't fail.
Yeah, that's great. I'm comfortable with that. Yeah. Can we speak against now the motion? Now that it's become the...
Yep. Well, if you, now that's the amendment. The amendment is now the motion, so I'll ask, does anyone wish to speak to that? Councillor Barber.
I'm going to speak against it, Mr Mayor, as opposed to...
Yes, the first speaker, unless Councillor, because it's now become the motion, Councillor Sullivan had the right to speak to it again.
And he hasn't, so now it's a speaker again.
A speaker against.
Speaker against. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, that has just wrecked Councillor Brooks' motion. I accept it. It absolutely has. It's wrecked it. You know, saying that we actually respect the views of people. Councillor Mears actually just mentioned, you know, the petition in relation to the SRV. People turn up to the podium here to discuss their problems. At the first Tuesday meeting of the month, sometimes they talk about it often about concerns that they have about things related to council. But what happens? Nothing. Nothing happens. This would have been a mechanism that actually could have actually empowered the people with the opportunity to have a petition, and then we deal with it. Whether we vote against it or we support it, it's immaterial. But this has actually just wrecked the honest and intent of Councillor Brooks' motion, and I certainly can't support it.
Any further councillors wish to speak for the motion? Any further councillors speak against?
Only comments now, Mr Mayor.
We can be only comments, so I'll put the
Comment? Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a comment. As far as I'm aware, any insights from the community in any way, shape or form on items on our business paper are in the annexes. And we, as councillors, have the opportunity to read all those insights, and that could include a petition. They're in the annexes. They're in the reports that we read, the views of members of the public when they're giving council feedback on items that are on the agenda. We have the option already to read and view those and then make informed choices and decisions based on everything in the report, and that includes what members of the public have to say about items on the agenda.
further comments. Councillor Barber.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I appreciate the efforts of Councillor Brook in relation to this matter. I just offer councillors some caution in relation to numbers on petitions. I know exactly who put me here and who voted for me. I understand that. It was the community, and that's how we're all getting here. So you don't need to create lines of delineation between that. What's important is, I'm concerned if we put a number on something like this, the people that live in a cul-de-sac, the 40 people that may live in a cul-de-sac and have an issue they want to represent, they've literally got no chance of having 1,000 people on a petition, so they won't get heard. And I think the provisions are there. We should accept any petition with any number from anyone and have it registered when it comes in, as it does. It gets registered as it comes in. They get receipted for that. It should be circulated to all the councillors, and we move forward from there. If there's matters that want to be taken up, we can do more research with the members of the public, and we can take the matter up then. I think creating policy for the sake of policy just creates more work for staff. I actually think it muddies the waters as opposed to clarifying. I'd like to think that anyone, I really don't care if it's a petition of 5 people, we should accept that as well. And it should be done in a proper form and considered by all councillors without the need initially to come to business papers. If it's big enough and it's of enough concern, then it should be, we should all recommend it comes to business papers. So I can't support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Is going on with what Councillor Budd says. Well, government already does that. Get a motion or a matter put before state government with a 10,000 persons petition that's been going on for decades. So to say that people get left out, and I think the numbers put at 1,000 was probably on the big issues. Why can't we have both? We have smaller petitions that come in, or ones that people want debated with 1,000 signatures, then come to us through council. Other than that, we're going to have a lot of other notices of motion being put by councillors if the other petitions aren't dealt with. If there's a couple of thousand people put a petition to do X, and it's just sitting in a register, then they will come seeking a councillor to put that motion forward. So I think it's another way of bringing things in through the business paper properly, whereas we're not actually overloading with notices of motion, which again, we get a lot of criticism for, but it's quite often, most of the motions that I've put together, and Councillor Roder and Brooke, are issues that come to us via residents anyway. Seems to be some disassociation that we're grandstanding and putting motions forward, but most of those are coming from the residents. So if they feel more strongly about those issues, a petition would bring it to the table for us, instead of us having to continually putting notices of motion in to support them.
Further comments, councillors? I'll just make one very quick comment, and that is we do already accept petitions where they've got 5, 6, 7 or 700. They go into the system, they get registered, and all councillors can be notified of those petitions coming in. I'm not quite sure why we need a policy, but it's up to the councillors. So councillors, I'll put the recommendation, which was the amendment, is now as a motion. All those in favour say aye and put their hands up.
Aye.
3. Those against?
Aye.
Lost. Started here with those. Can we all have those that spoke? Paul? Councillor Brooke, Councillor Sutherland, Councillor Impey. Spoke for. The rest spoke against. Councillors, thank you. We'll move into open council reports now, and we'll talk to environment and planning. Could I have a mover for 7.1? Councillor Brooke, speak to that, please.
No, Mr Mayor.
Look for a second for that. Councillor Impey, wish to speak against that recommendation? Anyone want to make comments on that recommendation?
Mr Mayor, just to say that it's glad to see some of the intent behind the housing strategies make its way into the LEP and support diversity of housing within the Arcadia as a development.
Further comments, councillors? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll move on to 7.2. Childcare Centre. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Sharp and seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Sharp, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, Mr Mayor, I know that this development is a contentious issue around the new housing area up there. It is unfortunate that the developer didn't disclose that they intended to do this. Unfortunately, council's hands are tied. But in terms of a couple of the issues that have been raised by residents, parking being one of them, I took a drive around about 4 different daycare centres over the last 2 or 3 days, and I found that most of them don't have anywhere near 25 parks. One in particular I was involved in, I know we only had 12 parks, and it was actually a bigger daycare centre, and they don't really have any issues. It's in a similar sort of cul-de-sac area. and I couldn't even tell which cars were staff and which were residents. In terms of the traffic studies done, you can tell they're done very diligently, and as someone who heads to Sydney about once a month, there'd be 10, 20 times the cars going through much narrower streets. I don't think there's much of a safety issue there. And 122 kids aren't going to arrive all at once. In terms of safety, we should all be driving to the conditions, no matter what it is. There's only 2 lots that actually adjoint the building, and they have to have an acoustic fence around it. So I think, and also light pollution was brought up, and under AS 1158 and AS 4282, the light that's allowed to come out of the building actually has to be less than the street lights. So that sort of, are they going to ask us to take the street lights down as well? Anyway, the way I see it, this DA was very thorough. Any objections by council will cost the community hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it will still go ahead. So.
Council, does anyone wish to speak against? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm certainly supportive of more childcare centres, particularly one that, you know, obviously they claim they've got the staff ready to go. But I appreciate there are many conditions in this recommendation, but I can't support it. The proponent had perfect opportunity, as that proponent owns other parts of that subdivision, to move that project further north, or certainly away from the people that have purchased those parcels of land in good faith. They're not NIMBYs. They invest a lot of money in their parcels of land and their subsequent homes. A number of them indicated that it was their, you know, forever home. And I'm always mindful of decisions like this that impact people that have purchased properties in good faith. And as a result, I cannot support this recommendation.
The speaker's full. Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and in no way is it council's responsibility to take in private ownership of residents and their land value into the consideration of development applications. Unfortunately, the LEP, that area is zoned for this type of activity. Unfortunately, we can't dictate to developers which part of the zone that they build within, but for them to be able to choose a development that's compliant within the zoning regulations. There's no secret, and Councillor Rodder agreed or highlighted the fact that we need childcare in town. You know, that we all agree that having young people having access to early education is a good thing. We know that having parents, their children being able to access daycare leads to a more professional and sustainable professional livelihood for entire families. We know that there's collective good that exists within childcare, and if it's compliant within the development, it's compliant within the zone, then we should be celebrating the fact that we're getting more spaces for young people to participate in childcare and early education, because the long-term benefit is going to be for the region. And so I can understand that there are residents that aren't happy with, you know, a childcare being set up. I'm empathetic for that, those residents. As Councillor Sharpen said, it's never great that a developer hasn't been upfront and told, you know, the truth to residents when they're looking to buy places, especially when they're looking for forever homes. You know, but in regards to the development application that's in front of us, that's compliant within the legislation, I don't think, well, I can't see any planning grounds to be able to object to the development application, and I think that we should be supporting more early childcare facilities into the region to support the growth of our families.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to commend the staff. It's a very good development put in front of us. As we've heard over and over, there are rules that must be abided by, and this certainly facilitates those rules. Why they have to come to council, I understand, but they shouldn't need to. If all the boxes tick, let's get it done, because we can't or shouldn't overturn it. I would say though, as some of the other councillors say, I do really sympathise with the residents. I spoke to one lady from out there and she had looked for months and months and months and months for a block of land in a semi-rural sort of landscape that was going to be her forever home, only to find out that someone, whether it be the developer or the person buying the land, hadn't told her the truth or withheld information from them. And she's quite devastated. And we often say, or it's often been said, not in my backyard. Well, I wouldn't want it in my bloody backyard either, to tell you the truth. Nothing against childcare centres, nothing against kids. I love them. I've got grandkids and great-grandkids coming out my ears. So it's not a thing that I don't like kids, but these people in good faith bought a property that they thought would be their ever home, and they're probably going to have to move if it's that much of a concern for them, and probably at a significant loss. We also don't have rules in our development applications that even recognise the fact that you could put a inappropriate business next door and your property value is not taken into consideration on an appeal against it. Or so, as much as I hate to say, I mean, I don't hate to say this is a really good development, but I really do sympathise with the families there. And I think at some time in the future, if we can make some amendments to our rules to protect people that come into this town, to, you know, it'd be like going there and tomorrow they put a coal mine beside your house. Well, there wouldn't be one of us happy with that, but too bad because someone didn't tell you the full truth. So if we can cover that somewhere in our development applications, then I think that would be a really good thing.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Impey.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. It is a complying development. It has been assessed against all the relevant planning details, so as a council, we really don't have a leg to stand on this. I wouldn't be human if I didn't feel for those people who are having good faith purchased land and built homes near the proposed childcare facility. And I feel for those people, but there will be other people within that neighbourhood who will have children and will think it's a wonderful opportunity because it would mean that their children can go to a childcare centre. And we're always talking about not having enough childcare centres and childcare spaces and places in our local government area. So it is a very good development, but I guess I do feel for those people who have in good faith purchased land and built homes nearby. I wish we could do something about that, but we can't.
Further comments, councillors? I'll just make one quick one. That is, I did meet with the residents out there. I fully understand their concerns. But I do raise the fact that, as many councillors have, this is a complying development, it complies. And anybody that actually looks at this and says, I'm going to vote against it in terms of the fact I don't like it or for whatever reason, is potentially putting the council, residents and ratepayers across the region at risk of having to fork out hundreds of thousands of dollars in a court case that we'll lose because it is a complying development. So we just need to be aware of that. So, councillors, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
Sorry, I'm wrong.
You're against, councillor Mears too.
Yep. Yeah, Mr Mayor, sorry, I got it wrong then. I was against. I was definitely against.
Councillor Mears, you are against. Everyone else in favour. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 8.1. Councillors, can I have a move and seconder, please? Move councillor, second councillor Barton. Wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Anyone wish to make comment? No comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Unanimously supported. 8.2, Local Traffic Committee. Move councillor Budd, seconded councillor Sharpen. Councillor Budd, you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation in the, all those recommendations in the, that are listed in the report? Councillor Wright.
Just one, Mr Mayor, just in relation to the proposed unfunded traffic listers for Carthage Street. which I don't believe in the locations that they're mentioned are necessary. And obviously we don't have the funds, we don't have the grant funds to construct them. But if we do, it's likely then to be a potentially dollar for dollar grant. I think we would be far better off removing that and allocating any potential grant funding we get to fixing the intersection of White and Carthage Street with a roundabout. I think, you know, everyone acknowledges it's a dangerous intersection. It has been a number of mishaps, vehicle mishaps there. And I think, you know, if you've been there at certain specific times of the day, particularly school, morning and afternoon, you appreciate that it is both a busy and potentially dangerous intersection, and a roundabout would ameliorate the issues that are located at that intersection. And I think the traffic blisters proposed elsewhere, the ones that I see around our CBD, I believe they're dangerous. They're often in poorly lit streets, and I think for a big wide street as Carthage Street, unnecessary.
Councillors, Peter, would you like to comment on that?
Is there a question, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Orders making a statement that he thinks it should be pulled out of the report. I don't think it can be. But
Can I just ask a question through you, Mr. Mayor? The concept of the blisters, I assume, is to slow traffic and provide a safe haven for crossing the street. Is that correct? So we're actually increasing safety here?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, all of our designs now, Councillor North, is that, you know, they comply to a standard, and the standard and the design standard that ensures that the design caters for all of the road use, not just cars and vehicles. You know, there's pedestrians, there's active transport, cyclists, etc. There's school buses. It's all sorts of transport use the road. So the design standard tries to cater for all of those road use, not just the vehicles. So the incorporation of the blisters and the raised central medians, etc. They're designed to provide a safe haven for pedestrians. They're designed to alert drivers to reduce their speed coming into an intersection, etc. In terms of the roundabout that Councillor Rodder mentioned at White and Carthage Street, we had a look under the black spot funding. So the federal government provides black spot funding for intersections or, you know, any road issues where there's been a history of accidents and fatalities. Federal government provide a calculation, like a warrant. You can determine yourself whether they have like a benefit cost ratio. You can actually apply the data yourself or whatever, and our staff can do that. Our staff applied the data for White and Carthage Street, and it didn't meet the warrant for black spot funding. There has been a couple of incidents, I think, at that intersection since then, so we can look at applying for black spot funding again next year when it comes up. I'm just not sure. Staff still don't think it'll meet the warrant. It's certainly not a high priority for us in terms of our integrated transport plan. 3 of the legs of White and Carthage Street have got raised medians. The accidents that have occurred there was prior to that. So the treatments that we have there now, we think will better control that intersection. But if the councillors want to do something, there's always the option in terms of the infrastructure to change some of the priorities in that integrated transport plan. But at the moment, it's the roundabout at that intersection. Yes, it would provide a better control, but the controls that are there now, based on the number of vehicles and the pedestrians in that area, are considered adequate, and they certainly meet the design standards. East Tamworth is close to the CBD. A lot of people in East Tamworth walk to the CBD rather than drive. Those streets are wider than most streets, so there is an issue that the road pedestrian users there aren't all 18-year-old teenagers. They can be young kids, and they can be elderly people who find it quite difficult to cross those wide roads. So the designs that the staff have put in place, if if we were building that road from scratch, they would absolutely be, those things would be required. To now upgrade that road and not incorporate them, I would feel that that's something we should definitely look at. I get what Councillor Lord is saying, it's not funded at the moment. If we can afford it within the project budget and scope, we'll certainly look at introducing them. And if not, I think, given the nature of that street and the incidents that have happened there, that I think it'd be warranted.
Councillor Rodder, if you wish to move an amendment and you wanted to take out item dot point 1 or item 1, you could, but you can't. You push the roundabout in replacement of it, so you can't do that. So if you wish to move an amendment, you're welcome to do so. But you can't be pushing the roundabout.
Look, Mr Mayor, I think the residents would prefer a roundabout there as opposed to what is currently in existence and what's likely to be. And but I can appreciate what the director is saying in relation to grant funding. It does concern me that I wouldn't want to delay this project because that is one of the worst streets of Tamworth City. But I guess ultimately, would it be throwing good money after bad if later on we did get a grant for roundabout and chopping up that intersection, which will probably be fixed up next year. Look, I appreciate that both the blisters are unfunded, but so is the roundabout, so I'll just leave it, Mr Mayor.
Further comments, councillors?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm in agreement with Councillor Rodder that ultimately I think that intersection of Carthage and White Street would be better serviced by a roundabout. I think anyone who's ever tried to turn right onto White Street from Carthage Street can attest to that. But we are in disagreement about I'd say overall about the safety upgrades along Carthage Street. Overall, I'm very supportive of those. We do have a legacy of very wide streets in this part of East Tamworth, and given the street's current usage and likely potential for increased usage as our CBD continues to grow over the years, it makes sense to me to make use of the opportunity of extensive road surface rehabilitation to also utilise the extra road width and infrastructure that isn't only for safety measures but enhances the walkability of East Tamworth. In turn, this could help encourage residents of East Tamworth to walk or ride into the CBD, potentially decreasing traffic congestion. It's also not something that we're being asked to consider in this item of business, but I did want to make a comment that after reading through the minutes of the local traffic committee report, I'm very pleased to see that council is applying for grant funding to do a number of extensive additions to our shared pathway network, and the committee has given its in-principle support to all of these much-needed pathways. Unfortunately, the one that was mentioned by one of our speakers earlier tonight isn't on that list, but there is some really good extensions that may potentially come about.
Comments, councillors? Councillor Rankin.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, I agree with the Councillor Rodder and Councillor Brooke. I think council should be doing all it can to look into a roundabout at White Street and Carthage Street, because it is a dangerous intersection. I know that the roundabout on the intersection of of Upper Street and Brisbane Street has improved the safety of the Carrossie students and also the Tamworth Public School students who cross that road on a regular basis. It does slow the traffic down, which is a good thing. I have seen on the odd occasion cars driving down White Street, driving probably in excess of 50 kilometres an hour, and a roundabout would slow them down, which would be a good thing. I'd also just like to comment, I think it's a good idea to have a disabled parking spot at the front of the Northwest Eyes Centre. Having worked in an office across the road from there for many years, I have seen many occasions where elderly people and disabled people could not find a parking spot in that particular part of Carthage Street. So there's a very good inclusion. And a Wombat crossing, Mr Mayor. That conjures up a whole lot of thoughts, I must admit. I'm assuming the Wombat crossing and the other works in relation to that outside St Nicholas, are they not funded or are they funded? Just to you, Mr Director, are they funded or not funded?
Well, I'll ask.
They wander in from the bush, of course we get run over.
Councillor Budd, being on that committee, are you aware of?
Mr Mayor, as the chair, I can say that this was actually moved before I was on the committee, so I can't give you exact information on that. Look, I suppose the basis of the information that's before us has been put together by traffic experts, Traffic for New South Wales, engineers for council, and I'm not across this one because I wasn't there for that particular meeting. But I do commend it to councillors as a very accurate, safe and efficient way of spending the funding that we have in front of us. I think we learned from our roads workshops earlier in the year that to build a roundabout's about $1.5 million, which is certainly not in this budget. I agree absolutely wholeheartedly with Councillor Rodder that a roundabout there would be fantastic. We saw some media this week which highlighted a former tragedy there, and no one ever wants to see that. So I think something we should pursue with some other grant applications in the near future. But in the meantime, I think this provides the best and safest options that we can provide for our town across all 4 points. So I commend the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Budd. Any further comments, councillors? Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, another great report from our staff through the Traffic Committee as well. Certainly not a criticism, more of a question. I do note that, again, and as Councillor Impey has pointed out, traffic parking up there is becoming a bit more of an issue, especially around school times. And I note from this report that it looks like we're going to lose another 14 spots. Now, I'm not criticising that because it's within that plan. My question would be, what are we doing, or what do we have planned in the near future to alleviate some of the parking issues in and around the CBD, which I will link Marriott Street in that because that's where a lot of people at work park, given that we've lost so many parking spaces over the last 18 months or 2 years or so. Again, not a criticism, just know if we've got anything in the pipe work.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillors will be discussing at an upcoming workshop, discussing a new parking strategy. The new parking strategy certainly identifies how we're going to manage parking going forward, and the councillors are supportive of that. We certainly have a plan to alleviate that. We're talking about multi-storey car parks and additional car parking in and around the city and how we manage that. One of the things I will say is that whenever we put parking controls outside the CBD, in residential areas, for example, then they're very hard to the police. We police the CBD, but we find it very difficult with our resources, limited resources to police it outside. With the new technology that we're using now, with the number plate identification and its drive-by, I would expect we will be able to police parking restrictions outside the CBD. So again, the councillors would have the opportunity, for example, to in East Tamworth, if they thought that was happening, to place parking restrictions in there and potentially issue the residents there with local permits, but then police people who would be abusing the restrictions.
Thank you.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put that recommendation in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Councillors will now move to item 9.1, schedule of meetings for 25. Move Councillor Mears, seconded Councillor Wolf. Councillor Mears, you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Mayor, very self-explanatory.
Anyone wish to speak against that or question that? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Councillors will now move to item 9.2. This will mean there'll have to be some conversation around this. The Australia Day events. Could I have somebody move the recommendation as Councillor Mears, second Councillor Impey? Councillors, we've got some services in different areas that to commemorate Australia Day. Could I ask what councillors would be available to attend the different ones? One, Barraba, Katinga, Manila.
I'm happy with Manila.
Councillor Mears, Manila. Anyone else want to go to Manila? Councillor.
Can I make a comment?
You can.
Just a quick comment, Mr Mayor, and that is that I would ask that I abstain from the celebrations and the formal commitments from council on the 26th of January. Personally, I hold a different opinion, which is around the importance of the date, represented by the community and entire family. I don't condemn people for their celebration on that day, but I will also be attending an event held on the 22nd of January at Bicentennial Park, celebrating the survival of Aboriginal culture. But with the support of council, I guess I will be abstaining from participating in the celebrations of that day.
Thanks, councillor. I can understand that. Councillor,
We need to support that.
we've done it each
Yeah,
year.
all right. I know that.
In, so I guess solidarity with Councillor Sutherland, I just want to say that I absolutely second everything he said, and I likewise would also like to abstain.
Other councillors,
We're running out.
Unavailable, Mr Mayor, or Mr.
in the state, councillor Impey.
I concur with the two councillors. I respect their views. I will be available. I like to be at Manila because that's where my wife comes from, and it's important to her. And
If you wish to put your name down to go to Manila.
yep,
And more than happy to be there with you.
Councillor Rodder.
Can I get back to you, Mr Mayor? I'm not sure if I'm going to be available.
I'm going to be busy.
Councillor Mears. Sorry, councillor Moore.
I won't be available, won't be in the area, so unfortunately I would have liked to have done Barraba, but I can't be here, unfortunately.
Councillor Sharpen.
I was going to do Tamworth, and I'm on the committee.
We do have a citizenship ceremony on the day. I do need to be there.
Yeah, that's right. I think, what time is Katingal?
Sorry.
What time was Katingal? I was thinking 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Yeah, I'll do Katingal.
Katingal.
Yeah.
I was one of yours.
So councillor Sharpen will do Katingal. Councillor Mears.
I'll try and do Barraba as well. Confirm it for now, but I will let you know.
So councillor Mears will do.
Manila and Barraba.
Well done, Steve, that's good.
I'll try anyway.
Councillor Mears and.
As long as I'm alive at the middle of the day.
Mears will potentially do Barraba and Manila.
That's great.
So we should.
Definitely Manila, and I'll accept Barraba, but I will let you know if that's in
So,
plenty of time,
we-
prior to the next meeting.
and I can do Nundle as well if.
Councillor Impey will do Nundle, so that covers pretty much all of those bases. Thank you, councillors. With those names on that list, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried unanimously.
Charles, it's a big trip too.
Councillors, we'll move to item 9.3. Could I have a move and a seconder? Move councillor Mears, seconded councillor Sutherland. Councillor Mears, you wish to speak to that?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that report and recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. We'll go to 9.4. Could I have a move and a seconder? Move councillor Saul, seconded councillor Budd. Councillor North, you wish to speak to that?
No, it's fine, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Anyone wish to make comment on that report? Councillor Impey.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just of the value of the grants, the monetary value of the grants that have been sought by Arts, Regional Arts New South Wales and other sources. It's good for our community to bring more money in from outside, and I acknowledge that some decent amounts of money have been sought through grant applications.
Further comments, councillors? Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried unanimously. Councillors, we move to item 10, community services. There are no items in community services, so we move to item 11, which is reports to be considered in closed council. I'll ask the general manager, has anyone requested any of those reports in closed council to be held on open council? Is anyone in the gallery wishing any of those matters to be heard open council? There is not. I'll call for a motion to move into closed council. Councillor Budd, second to Councillor Mears. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Very good. I'll now ask the General Manager to report on the items in closed council.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this is the report from the closed session of the ordinary council meeting held on the 10th of December 2024. In closed council this evening, you considered 7 items of business, and for all of those items, they were unanimously passed as per the business paper.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. Could I have a notice to accept? Councillor Bard, second, Councillor North. All those in favour say aye.